Sorry for the pause. I have to remember all the things I have to switch on. It's good to be with you on the Lord's Day. We're still talking about forgiveness. And got that on. Not working. Okay. Let me see if I'm just out of range. I'm posing for my statue. Working? Okay. Let's see. Nope. Okay, we're just going to have to do the good old-fashioned hand wave. I switched it to off. Yeah. Look. Look, it worked. Wait, now I don't understand that. You handed it to me on off. I switched it to off after it was off? Okay, we're here though. I was going to say Judges chapter 7. No, John chapter 7, judge not. John chapter 7, judge not that ye be not judged. For with the judgment that you pronounce, you will be judged. And with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. Why do you see the speck that is in your brother's eye, but do not notice the log that is in your own eye? Or how can you say to your brother, let me take the speck out of your eye, when there is a log in your own eye? And this is a great message, but I want us to notice something else. Did Jesus really say, judge not? Well, he really said it. But what did he mean? For with the judgment you pronounce, you will be judged. Did he not say not to hypocritically judge others? We think and we're talking about forgiveness. He says that when you judge someone else, you be sure that it's with right judgment. Look here. We read a little further. He says, you actor on a stage. That's a hypocrite. The hypocrites. You know, hypocrites don't always say and never live in it, right? You hypocrite, first take the log out of your own eye. Then you will see clearly to take the speck out of your brother's eye. When we're talking about forgiveness, we've been talking about how to make an assessment without hypocrisy. That's another form of what we're talking about with forgiveness. We're trying to look at the situations in our life without hypocrisy. First take the log out of your own eye, then you will see clearly to take the speck out of your brother's eye. So he does say to take the speck out of someone else's eye. Do not give dogs what is holy. Do not throw your pearls before pigs, lest they trample them underfoot and turn to attack you. That's all about judging others, actually. He doesn't say that we're not going to judge others. What he's saying is we have no business condemning anybody, right? But also that we're not gonna ever get away from making assessments of the actions of others. It's kind of an automatic thing. And when you do so, do it well. Do it rightly. And then in your confrontation, consider if it's even worth it. Do you want to throw what is sacred to dogs? There's a lot of wisdom in here, obviously, because it comes from Jesus. But what Jesus did not say was never to judge. The Bible doesn't say that. So, judge not. We've answered that question. And he says in verse 24, do not judge by appearances, but judge with right judgment. This is the problem. It's appearances. Jesus was judged by appearances. Paul was judged by appearances. We're making assessments all the time by appearances. Oh, you know we're guilty of it. But when we apply all of this to forgiveness, You cannot forgive something unless you can blame it. Otherwise, there's nothing to forgive. So it is necessary to be able to blame in order to forgive. What we've learned so far is you can't have general forgiveness, can you? God doesn't forgive generally speaking. He forgives specific offenses. Does he not? It's got to be specific. And in order to be specific, you've got to be able to blame. And you've got to be able to blame correctly, righteously, truthfully, and non-hypocritically. So, here's some forgiveness fallacies. Because our subject today is whom. Whom do we blame? Whom do we forgive? Last week when we said who, we were talking about who is the proper person to be issuing forgiveness. This week, we want to understand whose actions we are forgiving. But first, some fallacies. Who am I to judge? Who am I to judge somebody else? Well, we've covered that already in the scripture reading this morning. The Bible never says not to. The Bible says just to be real about it. Just to be humble about it. Another one is the blame sharing. Remember, we've talked about that too, co-responsibility. Okay? When you share blame, okay, you have a co-responsibility. But it's not the same thing as exonerating somebody. You can say that you're a participant in it, and it doesn't mean it was okay for you or for them. Okay? Just want to get through some fallacies here. Here's another thing. If you're going to say it's understandable what somebody did, then don't forgive them. If it's understandable, it doesn't need to be forgiven. Forgiveness is for what cannot be understood. If you can understand it, it doesn't hurt. If you can understand it, you wouldn't need to forgive it. And I hear people, over the years who sit in my office and say, I can't believe they did this. I can't believe so-and-so did this or that. I can't believe that happened. I just don't understand. I don't understand why evil people are so evil. I don't understand it. You know what? If you could understand it, you'd be one of them. Okay, if you could understand it, you'd be doing it too. So be thankful that you don't understand it. And don't forgive things that are understandable. If they're understandable, they don't need to be forgiven. Because you understand it. So why would you forgive it? Okay, it's a fallacy. Never reply to someone in a forgiveness situation with, oh, I understand. If you understand, you shouldn't be having the conversation. So how do we know who to blame? Well, you blame the person who done it. He did it. She did it. He knows it. You know it. It's a known thing. You did it. You blame the person who meant to do it. You don't blame a person who didn't mean to do something. They didn't mean to do it. They're not blamable. And the action does not require forgiveness because they didn't mean to do it. Like when someone hits you in a parking lot, you don't forgive them because they probably didn't mean to do it. Okay, they meant to do it. And the quickest way to know is your revenge meter. If you want that person to boil in the oil of hell, probably there's some forgiveness work that needs to take place. Okay? The target for revenge is the one whose actions need forgiveness. Okay? That sometimes is the meter. And they wanted to do it. Okay? They did it, they meant to do it, and they wanted to do it. That's how you know whose actions need to be forgiven. This is no one forced them to do it. Okay? And there's all kinds of ugly situations in this world that is run by Satan where evil things are done by people under force. They're done by people who are compelled. This is why when you go to a court of law and you have a contract What are things the judge is looking for? Did the person understand the contract that they were making? Okay, like, somebody who doesn't speak English signs a contract written in English. Okay, that's not a valid contract. And then when the contract is violated, did he do it? Did he mean to do it? And did he want to do it? Did he want to violate it? No speak of the English, no understand. Okay, you see what I'm saying? People have been forced at gunpoint to do things. Someone who's forced at gunpoint to do something does not need to be forgiven for their actions. Does that make sense? You may be harboring some personal thing, maybe something that happened to you as a child. Okay, you're holding tremendous guilt over that. Somebody forced you. Somebody in power over you may have forced you to do something. Okay? When you have to choose between your death or feeling threatened like you're going to die versus doing the action you're being compelled to do, God isn't going to forgive you because you don't need to be forgiven. Okay? We would say that was understandable. Therefore, it's not something that needs to be forgiven. Okay? So let's not perpetrate this any longer on other people. Because we think of ourselves so highly and we're so deific that we're so easily offended. Let's put it in right context. That's how we know who to blame. Here's our author of the book, Art of Forgiveness. Another quote. Forgiving is for the tough-minded. It is not for the soft-headed who cannot abide people who make judgment on other people's actions. Okay, this is a trendy thing. They're judgy Christians. Christians that judge. You've got to be able to judge. The Bible never said not to judge. It said don't judge with a hypocritical standard. You've got to be able to assess. If there's nothing to judge and nothing to blame, then there's nothing to forgive. Okay? We're in a process of trying to figure out what things we hold on to that are ridiculous and what things that we hold on to are true wounds. True wounds. Forgiveness is for the tough-minded, therefore, not for people who can't blame others. If we dare not blame, we dare not forgive. Right? Forgiving is for people who know their own faults. That's what Jesus was saying. Forgiveness and judging, even before the point of forgiveness, is for people who know their own faults too. Plank eye syndrome. Plank eyes. Okay? We know our faults. Because we know our faults, we're able to forgive. Because I know my fault, I'm able to give humanity back to you who have offended me. Knowing that we are mixed bags and complicated, and sometimes we get it wrong. And we don't just accidentally get it wrong sometimes, because that wouldn't be forgiveness. Necessary forgiveness. But we get it wrong sometimes because we meant to do it, wanted to do it, and did do it. Right? That's the people we are. We are sinners. Those are the things that need forgiveness. So forgiving is for people who know that they sin willfully. Do you know most of the sacrifices in the Old Testament are for unintentional sin? Because intentional sin is more complicated. It requires more than blood. It requires forgiveness. Wow. So, forgiving is for people who know their own faults, but who recognize a wrong and dare to name it when they feel it done to them and have the wisdom and grace to forgive. Wisdom and grace. Keep those two words in mind. Having the wisdom to know how to apply this and the grace to do so. So we never forgive people. You remember, we forgive what they do. We don't forgive people. We forgive the actions. Okay, Matthew 6:15, he says, if you do not forgive others their trespasses, if you do not forgive others what they did, not forgive others, but forgive others what they did. Forgive what others have done. Neither will your Father in heaven does not forgive you. He loves you. He forgives what you do. He doesn't forgive you for existing. He created you after all. Does that make sense? And Jesus never spoke like that. Find me in the Bible where it ever talks about forgiving people. You will not find it. I'll show you one in a minute. 1 Peter 4, verse 8. Peter admonishes the church, keep loving one another earnestly, since love does what? Yeah, it's about forgiveness. Jesus said, you will know they are my disciples by your love. Jesus said, therefore, they will know you're my disciples by your forgiveness. Jesus said, therefore, they will know you're my disciples by your conflict resolution skills. Okay? So, above all, keep loving one another earnestly. That's above all. Now, been saying this, but now we got a wording here in the ESV from Colossians 3 that looks like it's saying, forgive other people. Bearing with one another, and if one has a complaint against another, forgiving each other. Now, who are we going to go with? What the preacher says or what God says? Okay, but the word you'll be interested to know in the Greek is not the word aphiemi, which means forgive. It is a totally different word, which is the word charizomai, which means to give grace to others. Which it's perfectly okay to understand that means forgiving actions. But literally, it says in the Greek, gracing others. And I wanted to address that because someone might have been thinking of that verse, and you might think I'm trying to contradict the Bible. I'm not. I'm not contradicting the Greek Bible. It says gracing each other as the Lord has forgiven you. Not forgave you in this context. Of course, He has forgiven our actions. But graced you. Grace others with forgiveness as the Lord has graced you with forgiveness. That's what it says. So you must also grace others. Okay? Gracing, preserving, being kind, and certainly granting forgiveness. That's one of those actions. Does that make sense? Beautiful, right? Bear with one another. If someone has a complaint, be willing to let it go. A complaint, now that includes the things that are true offenses and not true offenses. We may have complaints against each other, but we've been studying forgiveness and we've learned that some things are not worthy of forgiveness because some things are just our egos. Kind of just being arrogant. We don't need to forgive that stuff. Okay, now, constructive forgiveness. Let's be constructive. Let's bear fruit. Okay, be critical of ideas and actions, not people. What happens when you criticize people? Oh, you think you're God, don't you? Who are you to criticize someone else that God made? So you'll find that we have proclivities. We have personalities. Some of us have a whole lot of personality. Be critical of action, not of persons. Oh, he's so... No, and we all do it. I do it. I do it. Oh, he is such a... You insert whatever thing. No, it's actually his behavior is this way. Okay, that's such an important thing in our head. Personal worth, by the way, is not determined by our mistakes. Personal worth is not detracted from nor added to by our actions. We are not saved by works, and our value is not our works. Works are another matter, and it doesn't detract from us. Although the Bible does call some people worthless fellows, it does say that, and I have to acknowledge that. There are people who are living worthless lives, lives with no meaning, just doing stupid, irrelevant behavior, not following God. And constructive forgiveness says focus on best outcomes. Not on winning, not on being right. Some of us have a competitive drive. We seem to have to be right. That's in the league of vengeance. That kind of goes with vengeance. But let's be focused on the best. God could have been right, or He could have had relationship. God sent Jesus, and plainly, God and Jesus are in the right in the matter. Plainly. We're in the wrong, and they are in the right for sure. But he decided not to be right. He decided to have a relationship with us. So he forgave our behaviors. And you say, whoa, why? Why should he do that? That's what makes him God. Only a God could do such a thing. Not the made-up gods of people that are petty and vengeful in their mythologies and act like human beings. This is God. What a God-like thing to die on a cross for me. Who would do such a thing? Only a God. So he's my God. Now, we can focus on outcomes because we have God's forgiveness, his grace in our hearts. So we can be big enough to now focus on the outcomes for all. Instead of having to be right and destroy an entire congregation while one person wants to be right. Right? See what I'm saying? That's why we're taught these things in Scripture. Okay, don't worry about understanding. Remember, you do not have to understand why somebody did something to forgive them. You can't. If you could, you'd be one of them. Does that make sense? So don't seek to understand. Don't say, why did you do this? It's pointless. It has to be forgiven. I am one of those folks that's always curious, though, why people did what they did. I may ask you why, because I want to know. But if I can't understand it or can't understand your explanation, I'm not going to distress over it. It still needs to be forgiven. And I give you this as our final quote for today, a little bit shorter today. Holding a grudge doesn't make you strong. It makes you bitter. It doesn't make it okay. It makes you bitter. Forgiving doesn't make you weak. It doesn't make it okay what they did. Forgiveness sets you free. Forgiveness is about you, not about the person whose actions. Forgiveness from heaven was all about Jesus and who he is. God, perfect in all his ways, will not live with mankind in eternity in bitterness and wrath. He ejected the poison long ago. You get that in the Old Testament, don't you? The wrath. All pending the coming of the Son of God. So today, the Spirit and the bride, the church, say come. Come to God's forgiveness. Come and receive.